Way. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the first of a bi-monthly series called Lessons in Data. So every 2 months throughout the year, we'll be sharing a certain sort of set of interests and issues with respect to data and activating data. And it is a little bit what it says on the front cover, which is lessons in data. So very much sharing what others are doing and what others are seeing. And today, our first session is focused around linking data and value together. Can it be done? We think it can be. Are we doing enough of it? Possibly not, but let's go there and have a conversation. Before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge the First Nations people as the original inhabitants on the land at which I'm joining this call today, which is in Brisbane. And I wanted to recognise the country north and south of the Brisbane River as home to both the Turrbal and Jagera nations and pay deep respect to their elders, past, present, and future. We are in Zoom meeting mode today deliberately so we can have dialogue. We will be recording just this first section with our presentations by our guests. So while that's happening, if we could keep our mute button activated, cameras off just for the moment, but you can certainly use the chat box at any time. And then when we finish the presentations, we will cease the video recording and we'll open up and hopefully we'll have some good dialogue and share some lessons. And the context for today and indeed the series comes under this sort of campaign and initiative around data leadership that the Smart Cities Council has been advancing for a couple of years now. The Centre for Data Leadership is a little place where we like to really go deep into the idea of data leadership, but also the activation of data, which is what today is about. Our data leadership vitals, as we call them, there's 5 of them. Data purpose, having a clear purpose for collecting and using data. And then some very common ones that are well known to us around privacy, security, ethics, and governance. But of course, data leadership also is certainly expressed through what we actually do and activating and actioning data. And so linking it to value, of course, is key. So here are the topics for the year. This is our first one. April, we'll look at privacy, where we're at, what's next. On June, we'll sort of hang out and have a sort of a sharing session around AI. What did we find? And to end the year, when we get there, it'll be our biggest data lessons for the year. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 2022. And each of the sessions pretty much structured the same way: 3 presentations, both public and private sector, and academia throughout at those relevant sessions. And you know, we want to look at how we are sort of linking outcomes to the actions that we take with data. We want to make sure that we also consider the processes and frameworks and standards that we might be using, and of course lessons learned. So with that, let's get stuck into our first part of the agenda, which is the sharing of what some others are doing. And what I will do is I'll stop share, and I might just quickly ask John and Sarah and Caroline, if you just quickly switch on your cameras, stalk them on LinkedIn. I certainly encourage you. Sarah Leach is all things principal coordinator in the City Analytics Office at Brisbane City Council. Caroline Falkiner is running Naveze, all things digital wayfinding, and John Hawke dialing in from Western Australia, Economic Development Officer, Smart Cities Lead. We have a fantastic team today of guests that are going to be sharing what they've been doing and what they've been up to. So with that, friends, I'll get things underway with Sarah to step up. John, Caroline, if you want to switch off your cameras, I'm going to do the same. I've given them 7 minutes each to share a rapid presentation. That'll get us to a point in time that leaves us a good amount for some Q&A. Remember, friends, the chat box is open. Questions, comments, thoughts at any time. Sarah, I'll fade off into the distance here, and I'm going to hand it over. To you. Okay. Thank you.
Do you have a presentation up? ROI reporting.
You've sent that to me on email, have you?
No, sorry. Can you? I'm sharing currently. Is that?
You're sharing.
I'd say if you can't see it.
I'm seeing a screen with Adam Beck
on there.
Might be the other screen.
Okay, let's try again. Round 2.
That is it. Thank you, Sarah.
Excellent. Thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. As Adam mentioned, I am the Principal Coordinator of the City Analytics team at Brisbane City Council. Previously, Council Smart Cities team, about a year and a half ago, we decided to pivot to focus more on data and analytics, and particularly city data and city analytics. So let me just pop this in full screen mode. So the topic of today is, I guess, linking value with data. And so the project I'm going to talk through in my 7 minutes is looking at some bin sensor work we did. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the actual projects, because I think most people on this call will have, if not rolled out their own bin sensor projects, have probably heard a number of presentations on them, but more, I guess, the changes we made based on the findings that we got through that data, and then how we linked that with organizational value. So here's a little quote, but basically saying, the data is nothing if we can't then inspire people in a position to make a difference. So very quickly, project specifics to give some context. We installed 60 sensors through our main Queen Street Mall precinct, which is our main sort of inner city shopping strip, and immediate surrounds. We did that on a 12-month trial, collaborating with a number of internal clients. We got access to the supplier's online portal, but we also then created our own reports in Power BI to allow sort of greater trend analysis and this return on investment calculations. And we used a local business based here in Brisbane. So what did the data tell us? Very simply, at the point when we created this presentation, we'd collected close to 600,000 kilolitres of rubbish, litres of rubbish from the project start date. We learned that our busiest periods were weekday afternoons and Saturday evening in our main strip, and also a Wednesday afternoon in Radcliffe Place, where we have a mid-weekly market in our CBD. And I guess this is where we start to link it with value. And so unlike a number of other cities who do bin sensor projects and the like to then sort of inform when bins need to be emptied, that wasn't the objective we went in with. What we wanted to understand was what's the usage of the bins to inform things like placement. Are our bins in the right place? Also, are we emptying them properly? So because it's a key, I guess, part of our CBD and the most populated area, we wanted to make sure that from a public amenity perspective, we certainly don't have any overflowing bins, but also were we actually emptying them too often, and we could find some savings in that. So when we looked across the data from a 6-month period, we saw that around 90% of bins on average did not exceed 50% of their capacity. And that was based on us doing 4 cleans a day. So across those 4 cleans, at no point were the bins, 90% of those bins were actually over 50%. So in that initial finding, I guess we realized that there was probably some efficiencies we could find. So what could we do, I guess, with the insights from that? So this is a tool that my team created, and I should mention we're very lucky to have some data science capabilities within the City Analytics team. So we had a project manager working to roll out the bin sensor project. We then had some data scientists working on sort of the Power BI ingestion, visualization and analysis of that. And so they came up with this really, I guess, interesting tool and calculator within Power BI, which basically meant that anyone, they called it the bin collection modifier, basically allowed you to play around with scenarios. So we could plot the current schedule, which is what is plot there, And then as you'll see running along the bottom, we could get a sense of where each bin sat in terms of their fill levels at that time of day or between those collection periods. And you'll see, looking at all of these here, that all of them, almost all of them, 90%, were sitting well below that 50% fill rate. Only on certain days and certain bins were we seeing it exceed that. And that was based on 4 cleans a day. So what we did from there was we looked at adjusting it. So the guys in my team sort of sat around and played for a few days, just adjusting the sliders to look at different scenarios. And so what they could do was say, all right, well, if we don't collect, if we collect at 9 and then we don't collect again till 2, what does that look like? And as you'll see, certain scenarios, we started approaching sort of the 70, 80% mark, which for us, we'd kind of made an arbitrary line at 80%, saying we were basically treating 80% as our 100% because we wanted that 20% buffer. But we started to notice, okay, you know, we might have gone a bit far in this one. Let's crawl that back. So the guys sat there and ran different scenarios to see what the most efficient collections were. And what they landed on was that if we did 9 a.m., 2 p.m. and 9 p.m., then we had less than 10% of the bins being more than 70% full. So for us, that was an acceptable risk. We were happy to take that. We also worked with the malls operation team in deciding these times or collection times, just to make sure it worked for them. So for example, I think the first one we proposed were 8 a.m. That collection team came back and said, not 8 a.m. please, like it's peak hour, everyone's moving through the mall at that time. So we made sure it was appropriate for the business, but also the most sort of efficient that we could get with the data. And so what this allowed us to do, and coming back to that link between data and value, is that we realized they could optimize operational efficiency. So they were doing 4 cleans a day every day. What we actually reduced that to, and what's being rolled out now, is that we can do 3 times a day and make sure we're picking the safest times to limit that overflow risk. We could save time, obviously, in saving it in bin cleaning. If we didn't need to do the 4 a day, we could only do 3. And it also allowed for budget to be reallocated to other value-adding tasks. So the way, I guess, the bin emptying contract was set up, it was set up with an operational area of council. The contract had been agreed in terms of the time spent. So we weren't able to, I guess, reduce that contract value this year. But what we could do is say, well, actually, let's reallocate those resources to be doing you know, more value-adding work, I guess, in that time. And what they also did in the team was develop this ROI calculator. And I think what we found really exciting with this is that even though it's been developed for the bin project, it can basically be rolled out across any of our council projects to really understand what the return on investment will be. So we built in a number of factors, such as, okay, how many collections are scheduled? We talked to the business area to say, you know, on average, how many people does it take to empty them? How long does it take to empty them? And so we learned that it took 2 staff an hour each time to do the collection schedule. We took a nominal sort of $60 an hour rate for that, and then worked out what that was costing us. We then went to option 2, which was the reduction to 3 collections per day, worked out the same calculation and realized that, you know, in full dollar figures, we were saving about $43,000 a year on that contract by simply removing 1 collection a day. Now, as I said, in this instance, it wasn't a real dollar saving because the contract was already in place, but it certainly allowed that amount of resourcing to be redirected. But what it's also meant is that in future years and future contracts, this will be, the contract will be based on a reduced schedule. And then when we when we talk about return on investment, it cost us $8,000 to deploy those bin sensors for 6 months. So our return on investment was about 5 times, which way we saved 728 hours, and that time could be allocated to other tasks. And as I said, a $43,000 saving, which in future years can be realised and allocated to other activities. And that is me. I lost all sense of time, so hopefully I've come in on time there, Adam?
Just a little bit over, Sarah. All good. Not a problem at all. So thank you for that. I'm looking forward to questions to come afterwards. Friends, remember to use the chat box now if you want to queue those up. But let's keep going. Caroline, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. So what we're going to do today is not only talk about the value of data, but to get you to understand where that value comes from and to maximise the value of that data. So, okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, perfect. Thanks, Caroline.
Great. Okay. So what we do is we create value from what we call digital map customer experience data. But before we sort of talk about that, I wanted to talk about what business case existed that allowed the development of the data. So I'm not sure how many of you have had that experience where you studiously follow your directions in Google Maps and then Siri announces, you have arrived, and you look around and you think, no, I haven't. I have no idea where I'm going. Where am I meant to be? And it's deeply frustrating. Alternatively, your ability to actually find something in an ad hoc way in a lot of places is really difficult to find. So if you think about the value of your GIS data, which you will have inside any local government organisation, if you procure that data into a tool like a digital map, you create compelling data, which allows you to deliver more economic and community value. So does that make sense to where we're coming from, like where the value of the data comes from? Okay, so when you decide what data to use, the best thing to do is say, right, who's going to benefit from my data? So who needs the information on my website, in my map, and what are we aiming to get from by publishing that data? So if you think about the kinds of visitors and community and tourist people that you want to engage and encourage them to behave in a particular way, that's where you work out what data to publish in your digital map. So you provide information of destinations, of things that families with children might like, what grey nomad people might like to see in a map. And by providing that information, you're able to communicate with them and encourage them to attend, buy a ticket, come to the park for the day. And then, of course, when they're in your location or your event, you continually communicate and provide them more data about what's going on in that place to get them to take visitor action. And if you think about that in a traditional marketing funnel, what you're doing is you're using data to promote visibility and engagement, drive conversations, which you can convert into visitor action, which is spending more time and spending more money in your destination. So what I'm going to do now is talk about exactly how the data you collect with a digital map creates value by using 3 of our customers as case studies. So the first one is the Western Australia Botanic Gardens and surrounds. And if anyone's ever been there, you'll know it is a humongous area and it has literally hundreds of really interesting places. So what we did is we went back to the Botanic Gardens and said, right, what is the most important revenue opportunity for you? And for them, it's the venue hire. So they have literally almost 100 venues to hire. So we took the GIS data of every single location of those venues, and then we provided information about what kind of visitor would want to use it for their family function. Is it suitable for an 18th when grandma's in a wheelchair? Is it near a playground for my cousin who's got school-age children? So we build all that data into the map that allows people to look at it and go, right, I'm going to book that venue. And then, of course, you send that map to those visitors. So you can track what visitors research, what they actually get step-by-step directions to, how long they spend in those locations, and whether or not they go back and check things out after they've gone home again. And all that data is called your customer value journey, and it's incredibly valuable to monetize and grow your opportunities with. The second example I'm going to talk about is the Shire of Dundas. So Botanic Gardens found in their initial, just their testing phase, they had a 5% increase in venue hire inquiries. So for the second one is the Shire of Dundas. So for some of you, this is the local government area that stretches from the border of WA and SA all the way to south of Kalgoorlie. So it's physically a local government area bigger than the state of Victoria. It is really only a pass-through destination. It's not really a destination in its own right, but because of their changed economic circumstances, they wanted to activate and increase visitors. So what they did is they put a QR code of their digital map in the petrol stations. So if you think about all the people that come into the town, they stop and refuel after driving across the Nullarbor, and they get the stimulus of seeing the map, and then the map highlights things that you might want to do in a stopover at that waypoint of your journey. So it's like go to the local art gallery, go to the laundromat and do your washing. All these things that get people to stop and spend more time and money in your destination drives value for that LGA. The final example is much more mathematically driven, and that's the Sydney Olympic Park project. So for those of you who've ever been there, during an event, it's massive. The scale and the distance that you have to walk is enormous. And during the data collection phase, we identified that between 55 and 65 people hung about in a space of about 400 metres that sat between McDonald's and Australian Stadium. So they were just standing around, nothing was happening, it was just a dead space. So when the managers saw that they had this opportunity of 3 days of 50,000 people they could monetize, it created an enormous commercial opportunity to either do an activation, an advertising pop-up. It really gave them ad hoc identification of opportunities in the moment. The other thing it did is it identified, by tracking that customer value journey, they actually learned that their visitor segmentation had changed, and that by looking at what people do and where their IP address comes from, they could see that there was a new visitor segment, which was grandparents. So they then developed their park assets to suit the customer value journey of this new visitor segment that we identified for them. So you can see that by using your GIS data and turning it around with a filter of what your customers want, you increase your experience and brand visibility, which increases your economic and community outcomes. So it wouldn't be a talk about data without a couple of graphs. So the data you get is that you use your GIS data to create a partnership with your visitors where they give you their full location data movements. It gives you on detail, contextual dwell and spend. It allows you to connect to your visitors, both digitally when they're doing a research and when they physically attend your location or event. And that gives you that enormously powerful customer value journey data analytics. And in the notes to this presentation, I talk a little bit about cookies and digital marketing for those who want to learn more. So really what we're using is an asset you've already got, GIS data, turning it around and putting it in a content management system that allows you to see, hear and talk to your customers as they experience your place or event to drive value for your community. So Sydney Olympic Park, Shire of Dundas and Western Australia Botanical Gardens all experienced in excess of a 30% increase in opportunities to either save money or grow revenue opportunities. Okay, so that's it. I'll hand back over to you, Adam.
Carolyn, thanks so much for that. I've taken some notes here, so I'm looking forward to circling back and asking some questions. That's great. Let's keep moving on. Last but not least, John Hawke, the floor is yours. Thank you, sir.
Great. Morning, all. I'm just going to share the screen. Just give me 2 seconds. Is that coming up?
If you just want to put it in Prezzo mode.
Awesome. Excellent. So, morning, ladies and gents. Welcome from Noongar country over in West. So, I just want to talk.
Actually, John, sorry, just go to display settings and swap them around because we're getting your first and second slide.
Okay. I do this. How's that working, Adam?
No, go up to, no, stay in that window. There'll be display settings. Go to the left, up the top. Display settings, next one over. No, go back up to the display settings. One over. Okay. Yeah, that one.
Swap.
We've got a bit of a black box in front of your presentation, John. Are you seeing that, or is that just on our end?
No, I'm not seeing that. Has that come up on the full screen now?
It hasn't swapped yet. Have you clicked it, or is it just hovering there?
Tell you what, why don't
the pipe might be a bit congested.
How's that?
Yes.
Cool.
We're still getting this odd grey box in front of your slide up the top and on the side. Can you not see that?
No.
I wonder if it's just me. Oh, one's just gone away, or it shrank. Did you do something there?
Okay, a little better. So what I wanted to do, ladies and gents, is talk through some of the lessons the City of Perth has figured out in our Smart Cities journey. We've been at this for about 5 years. So we've run a number of different projects. I'm not going to bore you with all the details of all of them, but the lessons learned from each project is sort of different. So our open data portal, this was where we decided from the outset that we would publish as much data as possible. I guess the lesson in data for that one is build privacy in from the absolute start. What that meant is we didn't undertake some projects that would be controversial or challenging from a privacy point of view. We picked stuff that we knew that we could get out the door easily. So video analytics, very, very powerful tool, generates massive amounts of data. The lesson in data there is you need operators who can get the value out of it. It's pretty easy with the tech. As you saw from Mariam's work, it's quite easy for the tech to get ahead of your capability as an organization. So picking or upskilling the staff was an important part. Smart irrigation has been one of our absolute success stories. Look, we took sensor data, added artificial intelligence, and saved massive amounts of water and money and environmental quality. So an absolute winner there. So the AI does much of the work. Smart lighting, again, we use the data to prove that we're saving CO2 and dollars. Our LoRa network is probably one of the unsung heroes of this piece, and my condolences to Sigfox recently, but having a way for the data to flow through the city at low cost in a public way so that anybody can plug their sensor in, any STEM, any school, any scientist, any innovator can use this to send and to receive their information. Having the data in the city of Perth's data lake is good, but being able to let other people do their work in our city is our ultimate goal. The smart bus stops showed us that real-time data is more valuable than lag. So having the refresh rate is really important. Pedestrian sensors. I mean, again, my thoughts go out to the Sydney and Melbourne who've had a terrible time with COVID. Perth has been spared largely, but we've had scares and the public here perhaps overreacts. So we've had to manage, where are our people, where are they not, what events were successful, what are we wasting our money on, what was effective. Having 80 plus cheap, reliable pedestrian sensors out there has helped the city plan, but again, we publish it. So real estate developers, event managers, other stakeholders in our city can see what's going on in the city for themselves. So publishing data for everybody to get to is important. I won't go over the smart bins, but suffice to say Sarah's ROI tool, Caroline's ROI tool is much better than anything I've done. So lovely, love that tool. I guess the other thing with data is extensibility. So reuse what you have. The basic chassis that we had 2 years ago, we've now bolted 4 different technologies onto it. So it's not a one-trick pony. We reuse, and extend. And this goes, again, not to the city of Perth, but we're now sharing our portal, our telemetry, our IP, our design, our lessons with neighbouring councils. Thanks to Adam, we've got a wonderful opportunity to partner with a small city in the Philippines, which is having some awful air quality, water quality, sewage, and COVID problems. So data and its use is transportable at almost no cost. So we can help that country with some of their challenges. And there's an export earnings opportunity. So sharing with neighborhoods, for our mining industry, lots of lessons learned being shared. I think the second major outcome is keep learning. It's a moving and complicated space. If it was easy, everybody would do it. I'm not saying it's difficult, but be prepared to be on a learning cycle. And my third and an overriding guidance point on the data from IoT is solve real problems. Simply doing an academic study with no outcome is not very valuable. To get the funding, to get the support, to get the traction, to get the community buy-in, find a painful problem and solve it. So for us, understanding the perception or real impact of COVID on our community has been the most painful problem for our city for a while. So we're looking at solving actual problems. This is a tiny snapshot of our sensor array. It's not everything, but it gives you an idea of the diversity and density and spread. I'm not getting too tech here, but this just gives you a little bit of an insight on how our various sensors feed into the middleware, and then we push that out the front door into Power BI or our open data portal. And I'm happy to share any of this stuff with you ladies and gents. So final slide, the insights that we're getting out of our pedestrian sensors from a COVID mitigation point of view, we can slice and dice what's happening in our city. We've got sensors throughout the whole place. We can understand our parks, our retail, and our livability dimensions, and understand what's firing, what's not, what worked, what didn't, and the Our executive leadership can't get enough of this. They keep me up late at night. With this event, did it work? Did it not? Did we save money? It's been a really accurate, real-time, responsive tool to management needs in order to make actual value changes for the city. So I hope that gave everybody a bit of an insight. I guess the key lessons for us is the sharing is the value. And once you have a platform, extensibility lowers the costs.
John, thank you greatly for that presentation. If I can ask Sarah and Caroline to come back up on screen, let's have a little conversation here. And appropriately, I'm going to turn the mic off, so I'm going to stop recording.